Okay, now we want to talk about the family business. This is Chapter 5 in your textbook. And so some of you probably are involved with family businesses, and this will particularly apply to you. Others may not be, but you could at some point in time have a family business, and so this will give you something to think about too going forward. What is a family? Well, a family is a group of people bound by a shared history and a commitment to share a future together, and so forth. This is the definition of a family. I'll toss in with you that just for your own edification. What is the definition of a company? Well, when we say company, we normally think of this business, this kind of a business entity. But what is a company? Well, a company is a group of people who have come together to accomplish some purpose. That's a company. One of famous military organization is a company in the Army, and that's a certain specific group. And so when we say company, we're talking about a group of people. When we say family, we're also talking about a group of people, but we're talking about a group of people that have a shared history and a shared future going forward. Well, here's the definition of family business. I won't read this. You can read this as well as I can. By the way, these charts have been uploaded to Doc Sharing on eCollege, so you can access them and look at them apart from this lecture. But the family business is an organization where the individuals who have established or acquired and are operating the firm are from a family. So types of family businesses are owner-managed, sibling partnership, cousin consortium. All those things can be family businesses. Typically, you'll see siblings operating family businesses that have been around for a long time. So a family business kind of really emerges after the family has owned and operated it for a time. So let's look at kind of the three-circle model of family firms. You can see that number one area, the kind of a bluish area, I guess, is family members not involved in the business. Number two is non-family employees, that's the light blue. Number three are non-family owners that are not involved in the operations of the business, that's kind of the purple. And then number four, that area is a family member employee, not an owner. That's number four. That's, again, a shade of blue. Number five, a family member owner not involved in operations of the business, and that's the darker blue. Number six, an employee owner, not a member of the family. And number seven is a family member, owner, and employee. Now, what we're seeing here is that of course, that's the orange. Number seven is the orange, the family member, owner, and employee. So that's number seven is the one who is really, but not only owns the business, but is busy operating the business as well. And if I look at that three-circle diagram, the heart of that diagram is really the region in number seven. That's where the rubber meets the road right there. Everybody else is on the periphery, kind of. But the important point here is that the family. Let's just go through this little list here. The family members are in 1, 4, 5, and 7. 1, 4, 5, and 7. That's right here. The employees are in 2, 4, 6, and 7. That's this circle right here. And the owners are in 3, 5, 6, and 7. That's this purple area right here. Okay. So where all of these meet is where the interests join. This is where all the various interests join. And that's really around number 7 when you look at it. So what are some of the family and business overlap areas that we have to worry about? These are the two major issues that you have to deal with. Family concerns versus business concerns. And you can see that list there. You can stare at that list a little bit and kind of get some ideas of what those are saying. But let me just say this. Basically, it means that can the business operate outside of the family so that every evening meal or every family get-together, all we talk about is the business. So you've got to be able to separate family concerns and business concerns if you're going to have a successful family business operation. That's a very difficult thing to do. What are the advantages? Well, they're pretty obvious. The strength of the family relationships during challenging periods of business change. The family members tend to have a greater commitment during very challenging periods to making the company survive. Why is that? Well, because one thing is their name is on the line. The family name is on the line when that occurs. Now, all the other things kick in as well, but that's probably the biggest one there. is the strength of family relationships and the strength of the family name. Now, the other thing you'll understand is that family members are willing to make a greater sacrifice to make the business successful than perhaps if you were just an employee of the family. So let's go. There's several others there. You can look at those and kind of ponder them a little bit. Let's go on here and look at some other things to think about. What are the advantages of the family business? Well, here's kind of a chart that shows you what those advantages are. Family business and cultural values, knowledge, a stable culture, reliability and pride, commitment, long-range thinking, speedy decisions. Those are all areas that are an advantage for a family-owned business. And probably the biggest one there, in my opinion at least, is the commitment. Most family members have a strong commitment to their family business if they're involved in it. What are disadvantages? Well, risk to the family, particularly in the case of a failure. That's a big deal. What happens to the family if a business goes belly up? And that's always a big issue. Is brother talking to sister, mom and dad angry at the kids, and so forth. So the impact upon the family in the case of a failure is a big disadvantage. Nepotism is a potentially big problem in a family-owned business, and here's why. In a family-owned business, it's sometimes hard to fire your family member and say, hey, you're not making a contribution that we need. I love you, man. We'll see you at the family reunion next month, but you really need to find a job somewhere else. And so that's a real problem in family businesses is, do I have the courage, do I have the ability to be able to fire my sister, for example? By the way, that's one of the things that I ask family members who own businesses whenever someone approaches me and wants to talk about their business and ask my opinion on some things. If it's a family-owned business, one of the things I will ask the owner is, are you willing to fire your brother or your sister or your cousin that you bring into this business? If you're not, do not bring them in. Do not hire them. That applies not only to family-owned businesses, but to any business. If you're an operator of a small business and you're being pressured to hire a family member, the fundamental question you've got to ask yourself is, am I willing to fire that person if I bring them on as an employee in my company? So one of the things you have to look at is, when you're looking at a family business or considering a family business, is what is the founder's imprint on the culture? What is the culture of my company, my family-owned company, and how has the founder impacted that company either for better or for worse? What are the cultural values in my company, the respect, integrity, the use of resources, and so forth? What are those values in the family-owned business, and how's that going to impact us going forward? So there's several types of commitments to the family business. This chart illustrates those. There's the obligation-based commitment, that's the ought to. There's the desire-based commitment, I want to. There's the cost-based commitment, I have to. The need-based commitment, I need to. So all of those, in one way, shape, way, or form, will go into how you interface, if you're a member of a family-owned business, how you interface to that business, what kind of, basically impacts what kind of turnover and performance you're going to have in the business, just from family members. Okay, so that's, I can say for any business I could have this little diagram. It's just that they wouldn't be family members; it'd be any employee that I'm trying to hire. So it applies more. It applies more to a family-owned business. What kind of commitments do I have from my family members to this business? Oftentimes it'll go down to kids. That's where you ask those questions. So co-preneurs are husband and wife teams, and sometimes you'll have sons and daughters involved in your business as well. There's always a strong rationale for having your wife or your spouse involved with you in a company. And there's not a thing wrong with that. That can be very good or it can be very damaging to your relationship. The biggest issue is that a husband and wife team need to be able to walk away from the company when they sit down at the dinner table in the evening and not let your business interfere with your family life any more than it already does. Okay? Got to make sure you have time just for family things and leave the business wherever it is. Sons and daughters sometimes want to be involved in the family business, sometimes not. And so that's just issues that the family members have to deal with. I've seen a lot of students in this class right here have come to me before and say, you know, my family has a business, it's a good business, but I really have no interest in it. My advice to them is you have to pursue what your interests are. If you have no passion for your family business, don't do it. There's a lot of concerns in passing on the family business, and this is a little chart that kind of explains to you the steps you go through. But obviously, if you're interested in passing the family business on, then you want to get your children involved in the business as early as possible and let them kind of work up to increasing levels of responsibility. You start them out at a little small childlike type task, and at some point in time, if they have no interest in the business, you'll know it. If they continue on and have an interest in the business, then you can work your child right on through all these steps to where the child can eventually take over the business. This is kind of the timetable that you have to look at here. Another issue when I've got multiple children is, do I have a problem with favoritism as I bring children in? That's another very difficult issue. The successful owners have brought in children, perhaps that weren't the oldest child, to be their successors, and were willing to make those hard decisions. Will my children get along as we talk about this business, as we work in the business? So the best case is siblings work as a team. Worst case is siblings compete as rivals and disagree about their business roles. At some point in time, there will become, if you have this situation here, the worst case, at some point in time, you'll have a split. The split being that one sibling leaves the company and you buy out their ownership. In fact, I have a situation in my family where it wasn't a split. It was a very good situation, but the son wanted to take over his dad's business, and so the dad just agreed to sell it to him. I'm sure that in the ultimate state that the daughter will be taken care of as well. Okay, now, we've talked a little bit about spouses already. I want to talk about other relatives now, particularly in-laws, in and out of the business. I'm going to tell you one more time. If you have a family business, or any business, if you're considering bringing in a relative, in-law, outlaw, blood relative, makes no difference. If you're considering bringing in a relative to work in that business, you have to determine for yourself, will I be able to fire that person if they're not performing? So if you can't address that question, then don't do it. That's my only advice. You've got to be very careful about how you handle disagreements and in-laws and other family members and children that you bring into the business. You can separate them in the business, or you cannot bring them in. There's all kinds of choices, but you've got to address these things beforehand. Know full well that when you start interacting with family members, there may be a day come when you have to terminate the relationship. Pardon me, the business relationship, and those are potentially difficult times. Okay, so what are some of the best practices for family businesses? Well, here's a whole list right here. You want, I'll just hit a couple of these. Look at bullet number 2. You want to solicit ample input from outsiders to keep things in perspective. And so in a family-owned business, you want to always be bringing in outside consultation, outside inputs into your business so that you can stay current in what you're doing, particularly not only with products, but in the management style and in the business model that you're using. Another thing you can do in a family business is you want to establish a solid leadership succession plan that may or may not include siblings, or may or may not include children that you have. A classic example of this is one that you're very familiar with. Ford Motor Company, for years and years, was a family-owned business, and it still is a family-run business. And from time to time, Ford will put into the CEO slot a person who is not a family member. The last time they did that did not work out well, and so now they have another Ford family member who is running the company, and so that's gone on for years and years. Now, what about non-family employees in a family firm? The biggest issue for non-family members in a family firm is career path and promotion opportunities. And this is something you have to be very upfront with non-family member employees. That you need to have an established succession plan, and the non-family employees need to be well informed about what the family relationships mean, who's going to succeed, what kind of promotional opportunities they will have. You need to be upfront with those and identify those clearly early on with non-family members who are valuable employees, who you will want to promote as quickly as you can, but who understand that they may not have a chance to actually run the company. Okay, so you've got to go through that process up front with the employees. Family council is another important thing you can do with a family firm. In other words, have a regular retreat or review where family members sit down and talk about the company, its future, where you're going, what's happening now, family involvement. Have it open and perhaps even have somebody else come in to direct the meeting, but make it harmonious and make the information straightforward and open to the family members that are involved in the company. So family councils can be good. If you desire, you'd want a family business constitution. These would be something like our core principles, our core values. I like the term core values. You see that right here. Every organization, I think, should have a short list of what are our core values. Who are we? And that should be something that's up front in what you do and published, and people who know this is our company business. I mean, this is our family business. And if it's not, even if it's a non-family business or a non-family entity, like this university, for instance, we need a set of core values. Well, the university has a set of core values. Every business should have a set of core values. Okay, now I've talked a little bit about this already, the succession plan and how you bring family talent into the business, and so this is something that you'll have to go back and kind of look at. But there's several ways to do it. You can mentor them. You can try to assess competency. There's a clear-cut paths or processes that you can use to bring family members into your business. So go back and look at that. I've talked a little bit about this already. How do you bring in family members? What are the responsibilities of the older family members? What are the responsibilities of the younger family members in coming into the business? So you can look down through these and get an idea of what we're talking about. I've discussed those earlier in this lecture. So, what are the conditions that favor successful leadership succession? Well, if you're making money and you've got a sound, profitable, established business, that enhances the chances of successful succession in a business. You have good family relationships. Have you planned in advance? You have positive family leadership and team-oriented culture. Have you presented career opportunities without pressure? In other words, offer the opportunities to your children. If they want it, great. If they don't want it, great. Just support them in either way, and make sure you have open communications in your business. Now, another issue that you'll have to deal with in a family business is transfer of ownership. And this is something that, again, you have to deal with early and deal with it openly. Ultimately, it's the owner's priority or prerogative to be able to define how the family business ownership will be distributed upon his demise or his stepping out of the firm. So you need to address all these questions that are listed right here if you're going to transfer the ownership of your business. Oftentimes, as in the case I discussed in Chapter 4, you'll have an owner who doesn't believe his children can continue the business, and he just sells it in the open market. Okay, this concludes Chapter 5, a very interesting little chapter, and something for you to think about as we go forward. We'll be moving into Chapter 6 next.